Well, welcome everybody. It's 5 o'clock, time for Committee of the Whole. Welcome to the Murray City Council meeting. We're glad that you're viewing our proceedings. Tonight we have scheduled a Committee of the Whole, a short break if we have time, and then council meeting at 6:30. Because of the current health pandemic, in order to comply with the governor's directive to stay safe, stay home, and the public health order issued by the county health department and county mayor, we've determined that an in-person meeting, including attendance by public in the council, is not practical or prudent. Therefore, this meeting is being held remotely through electronic means. Each person is participating from a separate location. We are totally dependent upon the internet and technology to broadcast this meeting and to ensure the public has an opportunity to view the proceedings. However, there could be malfunctions that is totally out of our control. We do not expect any issues. We want to make you aware of the possibility. If you'd like to submit citizen comments or public hearing comments, please email to city.council@murray.utah.gov. It should be less than 3 minutes, include your name, your contact information, and they will be read into the record. All council members are present. And we'll begin the meeting. The discussion items, Controvirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Grant. Chief Burnett, 5 minutes.
Okay, let's see if we can do this in less. With the coronavirus, the COVID going on, the federal government made available funding for public safety and essential personnel, and it goes along the lines with the Burn JAG grant that we do every year that we get some funding for. And so because we get that grant, we have the opportunity to get a direct grant from the Bureau or the Justice Administration. So the grant that they're offering us is $112,282. This is a 2-year grant for the purchase of personal protective equipment, supplies, and some training. Essentially what we've done is sat down with the fire department, and between us and the fire department, we have just looked over the items that we need and we feel that we will need to continue doing our jobs. And this has become quite a cost trying to track down and buy the personal protective equipment, whether just the masks that everybody's wearing and gloves, but gowns. Fire department is looking at buying some equipment, should we get this grant, that would allow sanitizing of inside of vehicles, the ambulances, the police cars, the fire engines. So as part of this grant process, we need to do a public hearing, post it up for the public to have any comment, and then we can get the submit it to the Justice Department, and they give us the money. We're using it only for equipment. We're not using it for any personnel or overtime or any pay. This is strictly just for supplies to be used by public safety and the essential city employees. A lot of the things that we're already in the process of buying, this will help us build that stockpile up that we'll be able to use in the coming months. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions for the chief?
I just have one. I'm wondering, how long do you think it would take to get the money? Any ideas on that?
Once the process is completed, we submit the paperwork to the Justice Department. It comes pretty quickly, and I think there needs to be a budget opening, as with all grants. So it'll come relatively quickly. We should have it in the next couple of months, and it's good for 2 years. So it's not something we need to spend all at once. Something that we will have 2 years to spend out.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just one question. Since it's a 2-year grant, is it all paid in one lump, or do we get half of it and then half of it?
No, it comes all at once,
Okay.
but we have 2 years to spend it. So
Great.
sometimes you have to spend it quickly, but if we don't have it all spent at the end of those 2 years, then there's issues where sometimes you have to give the money back. So essentially they're saying, here's money and you've got 2 years to spend it. And we
Thank
have
you.
to account for it quarterly.
And I'm assuming you'll use it.
Yes, we have a 2-year plan that Joe Tarver and Doug Roberts from our police department and Joey Middleman from the fire department have sat down and put out a 2-year plan of all the things they need to spend. And believe it or not, they went over.
I'm sure.
So we'll be able to spend
It'll be
it.
you. Awesome. That's great that you guys are doing that. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Chief.
Hey, thank you.
Okay, next, severance pay code revision, GL.
Thank you. This is the agenda item that deals with amending current city ordinance section 2.62.040 relating to severance pay for employees who are not in either career or public safety service. If you've got the ordinance in front of you, you'll see as we already allow those employees who are appointed and at will to have severance pay if they are involuntarily terminated. One of the reasons you do that is to make sure you attract talent and give them some assurance that if they are terminated at some point, that they will get the severance. The proposal is to add to that group 2 more groups who also are at will, and that is members of the administrative staff in the mayor's office and members of the administrative staff of the city council office. So what this means essentially is if one of them were to be terminated involuntarily, then you would count up their years of service and determine how much they're eligible for severance pay. The maximum amount is 4 months of severance pay. And that's basically it. It's a pretty straightforward, simple idea.
Any questions for GL?
I have a question. I'm just wondering how many employees that would apply to at this point.
At this point, that would apply to 6 employees.
6?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? All right, thank you, GL.
Thank you.
Next, pollution discharge elimination system coal permittees. Danny. That's a mouthful, Danny.
Yeah, that's only part of it, but I'm not gonna say it. But this is a really a long-standing arrangement that we've had since the state implemented and became the purveyor of the pollution discharge elimination system for stormwater. And Salt Lake County, we co-permit with them, and they provide a lot of services. We do work with what we call the Stormwater Coalition Group, and that's all of the towns and cities that are too small to be required to be on your own. So you have to have a population over 100,000 that requires you to be, you would have to be on your own. West Valley, Orem, Provo, large cities, Sandy. So the smaller cities and the smaller groups, towns, co-permit with the county to provide these services and to be under the umbrella of the single permit. But it doesn't relax any of the requirements. We still have to do them, and Salt Lake County, as well as the state of Utah, will audit our work that we're doing. And actually, we just went through an audit last year, which was, there were some deficiencies, but they weren't as bad as a lot of the cities. So anyway, it's time for that permit to be renewed, and so that's what this agreement is all about. Any questions for me?
No questions?
All right, good. Thanks.
That was easy, Danny. Okay, number 4, text amendment, transit orientated development zone. Melinda.
Actually, we're on the zone map amendment.
That's what I meant to say.
Okay, sorry.
No, I just crossed it off before we got to it.
You threw me off for just a second.
Yeah, I threw myself off. Zone map proposal 6450 and 6468 South 13th East. Melinda, sorry. I was just testing you.
I hope I passed. Okay, so hopefully you all can see. See, it's not playing.
It won't play?
No. There we go. Okay. So we have an application from Dwayne Rasmussen to change the zone map from R18, low density single family, to R16, which is low medium density single family. The address is 6450, 6468 South, and it's on 13th East. The two properties combined are 0.46 acres. Here is an aerial view of the two lots combined there. And this slide shows the property right now is located in the R18 zone. And the future land use map shows that the zoning is to stay low density residential. This is a slide or a page grab from the general plan. And in 2017, we changed the general plan to support more infill housing. So a zone map amendment such as this is supported by the general plan because essentially the end result of the zone map amendment would create 3 buildable lots versus the 2 that are there right now. Here are some photos of the properties that we mentioned, the 6450 and the 6468 South. So this item was heard by the Planning Commission at the April 2nd meeting. They did not receive any public comments. The Planning Commission voted unanimously to forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council. So staff and the Planning Commission are both recommending approval of the zone map designation change for the property and to change that from R18 single family low density residential to R16 single family low density residential. The main difference between those two zones, there is a lot size. So the R18 zone requires lot sizes of 8,000 square feet or more. R16 is 6,000 square feet or more. There's some setback differences and height differences as well. In the R16 zone, the height is 30 feet versus 35 feet in R18. But we did some analysis of the surrounding properties, and even though the properties surrounding these particular two properties are zoned R18, the lot sizes are actually smaller than that 8,000 square feet. So based on that, we feel like the zone map amendment would be supported. It wouldn't take away from the existing characteristic of the neighborhood. So again, we recommend approval for this zone map amendment. So if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
There were no public comments at all in the zoning meeting, huh?
No, and this was actually the first meeting that we held all electronically. We renoticed. So this item was originally scheduled for the last meeting in March. And so there was kind of double amounts of public notices because we renoticed the meeting to account for not having meetings in person and to ask them to submit comments through email. But even still, with the double notice, we didn't receive any comments.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Doesn't sound like it. Okay, thank you, Melinda. Now let's move on to text amendment transit oriented development zone. I really wanted to get to this one. Melinda.
Okay, it is a little bit more exciting than the last one, maybe. Let me just find the right one and share my screen again. Okay. Okay, this one actually is an exciting item to come before you. The applicant is actually, it is Habitat for Humanity, and they are looking at the property located at the corner of 4500 South and Main Street in the TOD zone, which is over the Fireclay area. And what they're proposing, and the reason why this text amendment is before you, is because their proposal includes some items not currently allowed in the zone, but they're proposing some affordable housing mixed use that would include the Restore facility and headquarters for the Habitat for Humanity. I don't know if you're familiar with the Restore facility, but it's essentially a secondhand store for building goods and kind of housing products. And so it's a great way to kind of reduce waste and have building materials supplied to individuals at a lower cost. So they've proposed this mixed-use development over there, and the TOD zone does not currently allow for the wholesale trade of lumber. And so they have asked for a text amendment to add essentially one land use code to the list of items that would be approved through conditional use, which the item number is 5198, the wholesale lumber and building materials. So this slide just shows an overall zoning map of the city. You can see at the top of the screen, there is a yellow circle. It kind of shows the TOD zone, which is that kind of salmon color. The TOD zone is shown a little bit more detail here. So we can see we've got 4500 South bordering on the south, and then we have Main Street here. The property that they're looking at is this property right there on the, I guess, the southeast corner of the zone. So what we have, or what is proposed with the text amendment is to amend the 5100 codes to allow just one of those. What are the land use code item to be 5198, but instead of blanket allowing all of the 5100s, we wanted to provide some additional items of conditions so that the area, the current zoning gets protected with the intent of the TOD zone. So the proposal is to add in just the one use of 5198 and to have that limited to wholesale and resale and building with footprints no greater than 30,000 square feet. And we would not allow any outdoor storage. And then anything with delivery or docks would have to be screened from the public streets. So one of the reasons why we're comfortable proposing this in the TOD zone is, well, going back to this slide, the TOD zone up there in the Fire Clay area is the only area within Murray City that has that zoning designation. It's primarily built out, and so adding in this use is not a big risk to the rest of the area to have a bunch of developments like this try and come in. So because it's so built out, we feel like this is a comfortable text amendment to make to allow this project to move forward. So again, just a little bit more detail, kind of a rendering of what the facility could possibly look like. And then again, down in there in the southeast corner of the zone is the proposed project site. So this item was also heard at the April 2nd Planning Commission meeting. There were some public comments that were received. Michael Brodsky, you may be familiar with him from Hamlet Development. He stated his support of the text amendment, and he has also stated that he's going to be working as a volunteer to help develop the property. He's got a lot of expertise and knowledge with the soils and materials over there in that area. And so they had asked him to come and help with the project. And then Jeremy Runya, who works for Housing Connect, which is essentially part of the Salt Lake County Housing Authority, also stated his support of the text amendment. Those are both of the applicants. So we didn't receive any other public comments. Planning Commission voted unanimously 7-0 to forward the recommendation to the City Council. And then we are also, staff and the Planning Commission are aligned in that recommendation of approval to amend Section 17.168050, the TOD zone, to allow land use code number 5198, wholesale of lumber and building materials as a conditional use. See, that was way more exciting. Can I answer any questions for you, Council?
Does anyone have any questions?
I just have a comment. I think it's a great use of that property, so I think I'm very supportive of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Habitat for Humanity is a great organization.
Yeah, really.
It would definitely be an upgrade from what's over there right now. So we're hopeful the project will go through.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Melinda. We'll move on to text amendment, home occupation business. Melinda.
I'm actually going to turn this one over to Jared, we are socially distancing, but he is here with me. He's going to take you through this. So I'll get the PowerPoint.
All right. And so this, and I'll talk loud. I think you'll be able to hear me. Can you hear me okay, everybody?
Yes.
Great. I have one of those projecting voices that are kind of obnoxious, so I'll do what I can. This is a text amendment related to Title 1724. That's our home occupation section of the zoning ordinance. And there are a few things in home occupations that we have been discussing, making some modifications to for some time, and we're ready to pull the trigger and took that to the Planning Commission recently, and they did forward a recommendation to you all as the City Council for this. There are kind of four main components. Can you go to the next slide for me? So there are four general parts to it. You can kind of categorize them into. The first part of it is that we identified a clear distinction between major home occupations and minor home occupations and home occupations generally. And this is an outgrowth of the legislature in 2018 making some changes to the way that cities are allowed to charge for the application and fees like that for home occupations that don't have an impact. So we wanted to define no impact home occupations, and we've done that here, and then separated them out as major home occupations and minor home occupations. So minor home occupation, as you can see, is any home occupation business that's not classified as a major home occupation business, everything but. And major home occupation businesses are everything this is based on the state legislature's definitions for who can and can't. So major home occupation is one that has an impact that's larger than its impact as a residence on its own. that's used materially exceeds that. So that allows us a clear definition and a distinction between who's major and who's minor, and therefore the next part of it, if you go to the next slide, the next part of it is who gets charged. So basically a home occupation that is described or defined in our new definitions as a minor home occupation will not be charged. And that's because we're not going to require them under this proposed change to seek a license or have a license. That's always been in our purview. We've not ever done that in the past. We've always said, well, you have to have a license. And so when the state changed their rules and said, you can't charge any fees for these no impact licenses, we ended up as a city tracking and processing and dealing with a whole bunch of licenses for whom we couldn't even charge $25 anymore or $50 anymore to process. And they also had to keep going through this process, and many of them don't really need a license. The state doesn't require them necessarily to have one.
I can't hear Jared, sorry.
Oh, you're losing me? If you'll turn your volume, or if you'll mute yours, so I can unmute mine. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, thank you.
Better? Sorry about that. So let me just back up just real briefly. We ended up as a city, after the legislature changed those rules, we ended up processing and tracking and dealing with a whole lot of licenses that we couldn't charge a fee for, even a minimal fee. And that's not only a problem for us, it's a problem as a city, but a problem for applicants who really have very minor businesses and didn't really feel like they got a lot of value out of having to go through this process every year with us. So that's the intent here, is to say minor home occupations that have no impact, we don't want to license you. We're only going to license and charge for major home occupations that are bigger, daycares and piano lessons and things that have an obvious impact, kind of to try to put ourselves in line with the state legislature's intent. Now, along with that, the last item there, C, is that an owner of a minor home occupation, somebody that's operating as say they're a tax accountant and they work, for 3 months out of the year and they only work from their home or at other people's places, they have no impact, but they may want to have a license. So item C there is our code proposal to say those folks could opt in as if they were a major home occupation, and it removes that problem where we're not allowed to charge them because they're opting in and saying, well, I want to have a license, even though you don't require me as a city to have one. So they're agreeing to let us charge them $50 or $100, and then they have that license to shut. We're not requiring it of them, they're opting in. Does that make sense? Okay, so if you can go to the next one. Those are the first two kind of components. The next big thing that this does, that this proposed text amendment does, is talk about offsite and onsite employees. There was some confusion in the existing code about what constituted an onsite employee and how many there could be. This clarifies that every home occupation, they can have one employee who does not live in the home. Generally speaking, home occupations, family can work together in the home. People that live in the home together can all be part of that business, but only one employee from outside of the home can be part of that business, unless the Planning Commission allows additional employees through that process of reviewing a major home occupation. So that kind of pushes you over into that category as well if you have outside employees, but that generally does that anyway. You're not a no impact license if somebody who doesn't live at the home comes to work every day. The other thing that it does is clarify offsite employees and how they get to function with the business. If you have employees who are not part of your business on a daily basis, but that work offsite with you, work from their homes doing other things, and they don't have any reason to come to your home for part of the business, if they ever do, they cannot park at the home along the street near the home. So if they're an offsite employee, then we're asking them to verify that they are truly an offsite employee and they're not at the house on a daily or regular basis. The next part, fourth part, has to do with the use and storage of trailers. A lot of home occupation businesses, typically landscape contractors and other folks like that, will have a trailer or something like that. We have ordinances that do not allow any business-related vehicles or trailers at homes. This current proposal will allow them with certain restrictions, 1 through 6 there. It can be an open trailer, it can be an enclosed trailer, it can't be more than 20 feet long. That we felt like was just too large of a trailer or equipment. Materials and equipment that are part of that can't be stored outside the trailer. So if you're a lawn maintenance company and you have 6 lawnmowers, we're okay with your lawnmowers being on your trailer in this code, but we don't want them on the driveway, in the front yard getting serviced or out of the way or whatever. We have that problem. These are all written based on sad experience. The third one, that trailer needs to be kept in the side or rear yard behind a fence or be in a garage. And if it's going to be in the front yard temporarily for any reason, it has to be on a driveway. You don't get to pull the trailer over onto the lawn and leave it there. The trailer also needs to be in good condition. We have had some pretty rough looking vehicles around. And then also that area where the trailer's parked needs to be paved. We have accepted gravel and things like that in the past, but dirt in your backyard doesn't count. And then when you're applying for a home occupation license and you're going to use a trailer, we are going to require, or we'd like to require, a site plan showing where that trailer is going to be kept, so that we have that on record, so that when we get complaints about it, we have something to fall back on. That's kind of the nutshell of that. There are, among those four, other than those four big points, just a few little mop-up items that we did, clarifying that business vehicles that get parked at the location for home occupations need to park off the street, other than, a delivery of a package or something like that for the home. That disruptions could include excessive traffic, noise, and dust. Oddly enough, that wasn't really clear in the ordinance, and we need to be able to do that for code enforcement issues. Again, that the home occupation business can only be operated by people who use the home as their primary residence. So there are a lot of kind of varying situations of people's residency. We wanted to make sure that it was clear that you don't get to live in the house for 1 month and declare that that's where you run your business from as a home occupation. You need to be an actual resident. And then fourth, that when it's, and this is an odd one too, but in several places, we needed to clarify that when we ask people to go to the Planning Commission to be reviewed for their home occupation, for their major home occupation, that is for the purpose of considering conditions that would reasonably mitigate the impacts of that occupation. That's just sort of the legal aspect of it. We wanted to be able to lean back on that and say, here's why you have to go to the Planning Commission to talk about this. Those are the changes in a nutshell. I know there's a lot of them, so I apologize for the quick rundown, but the Planning Commission meeting was held on that same night that we talked about before with these other two items. We did not receive public comments on this, and the Planning Commission did feel comfortable with it and voted unanimously to send it on with a positive recommendation to the City Council today. We're still in line with that. We feel like these are good changes. They've been necessary for a while, and they've been a long time coming, to be honest, and we're glad to have them in front of you for consideration. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Jared. Anybody have any questions for Jared?
I do. In what instances would a business owner, home office business owner, want to have a license? Like, what are some of the situations? Or
sorry, can you say that again?
Can you hear me?
Jared, also, will you guys take down that screen so we can see everyone? Thanks.
Can you guys hear me? I don't know if you can. Dale, can you hear me?
Okay.
At what point would a home business want to have a license if they're not required to have one?
It just depends on that home business. It would depend on, a lot of them don't care. A lot of people with home occupations don't care. Digital photographers and people like that, they may not care if they have a license. There are some people, and that's why the state legislature, frankly, stepped in and said, look, some of you cities, and this is just my recollection, there were cities that were charging people to do business as something like a home-based photographer that went out in the field and took their pictures or whatever for people's graduation, et cetera, $400 to be a home occupation license. We were not the offending party as Murray. We charged very small amounts for these licenses, but there were some people that were greatly offended by the process of home occupations. And those folks were saying to Senator Anderegg was the gentleman that brought it through. It was unreasonable. They didn't even really need licenses. And so the state legislature over two different sessions agreed and said there's no reason for folks that have literally no impact to their neighborhood for what they do from their home to pay hundreds of dollars to businesses and be through these hoops. So we're kind of just getting in line with that and saying, that's true. If someone is a digital photographer and they do most of their work out in the field and there's no impact to the neighborhood, really from them running that business, they don't need to have a license. If they would like one, then we want to be able to accommodate them. So we didn't write it out wholly and say, we will not license you. We just don't want to make them get a license if they really don't need one themselves and don't have an impact.
Councilmember Dominguez, to follow up on that, there are some instances where you may want to have a license for insurance purposes, or maybe homeowners insurance might require you to have a business license. So that could be another situation where people have come and out or have wanted to get a license just to fulfill some type of an obligation for that.
Good point.
Awesome. Yeah, that was kind of where I was going. Is it because of insurance or tax purposes that they would want to know? Because I know on your taxes you can deduct it in your taxes of having a home office. So I was just curious if you guys knew. All right.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's a great point.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Jared and Melinda, when you talk about good condition, how do you determine that? If it's, I think that's the word. I can't remember if that's the word you use, but the trailers are in good condition.
Yeah, kept in good condition.
Yeah, kept.
It wasn't really further defined than that in the code that we have proposed, in the ordinance we proposed. Although I would say probably just in operable condition. So licensed, operable, no flat tires, that kind of thing.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I had one question. And that was when talking about the on-site employee who doesn't reside in the home, is the intent of that to mean one employee on the books hired by the in-home business, or is it intended one at a time in the residence?
That's a really good question. I believe that the actual text talks about one at a time. Give me 1 second. Up to one person not residing in the residence may work, volunteer, or otherwise assist with the business on site at the dwelling, period. So it's not about the timing, it's that one person. So if they want to have more than that, or they need to have more than that one allowance, they'd have to go to the planning commission and say, well, I have 3, but maybe they're not all, maybe that's a problem, but maybe they're not all there at the same time. They could further condition that. But the intent of the ordinance, the way it's written, is only one at any given moment.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
And if I can just add a couple other items, the business licensing is meant to pay for itself. And we had a study conducted a few years ago, which kind of showed how much the business license fees should be, how much we should charge, based on the time it takes, the resources, the materials, the licenses. And as we, took a step back and looked at this, we felt like the value of whatever little information we were getting based on requiring these businesses to be licensed just did not outweigh the volume of work associated with it. So we haven't been able to receive these revenues for the past couple of years. This will just allow us to drop the workload, which will be very helpful with our staff here to not have to worry about licensing businesses that we can't charge fees for. And then lastly, we have had a number of situations over the last couple of years where the businesses have failed to renew their licenses on time, and even though they're exempt, with the system that we have, our software isn't able to exempt those late fees, even though they're not charged an actual licensing fee. So we've had to do a lot of manual fee adjustments, and also the exempt businesses are not able to renew the business licenses through our online system. And so all of that work has to come into our office and be done manually by staff. So it's just very cumbersome and ends up being, again, work that we just can't recoup any costs for.
Okay, anyone else? All right, thanks, Melinda and Jared.
Thank you.
Let's move on. Excuse me? Okay. Let's move on. Vacate a portion of Poplar Street right away, Danny.
Sorry. Okay, here I am.
There you are.
Go figure. So I've been trying to get a couple pieces of information to come up so I could share my screen, and I'm having issues doing that. So if you bear with me just one second, I'll try to get something. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, so the information I'm going to share with you tonight is just the two portions of the vacation of right-of-way. We'll start with the petition number 1, which is the section of Poplar Street and where it connects to Vine, but it's the Day property, and you can see where from this information how the road goes right through their parking lot right now. They actually have two pieces of covered. I don't know if you can see the hand that's in there. They have two covered parking areas. Anyway, the portion that we're going to be vacating is a piece of property to the side of their building, as well as where an old house used to be, and then a portion of the actual right-of-way of 4th Avenue. And as part of this, to make sure that they were made whole as far as parking spaces, parking area. I don't know if you have any questions with that, but again, this is a less graphical, but maybe more explanatory, but maybe not.
Go ahead, Danny.
So the idea would be is we are going to vacate the portion of 4th Avenue as part of this deal. The other half of the road, because we're going to vacate that whole portion of 4th Avenue there, the other half will go to the RDA property. So it expands the RDA side of it as well. So typically when you vacate properties, they go to each adjoining, half goes to each adjoining property. So that's what we've done here to make sure that the property owners being treated fairly, we're treated fairly. And if you have any questions there, I'd be glad to. And maybe GL could explain the typical actions here, but I'll leave it to you to ask questions.
Any questions for Danny on that? Doesn't sound like it, Danny. We'll move on to vacate a portion of 4th Avenue right away.
Okay, so let's go down one more screen. So at the top of the screen, you can see there's State Street there, and then the existing Poplar Street that goes through there, which is the access to the fire station and to the mansion and a couple other things. Anyway, that's that section. So from 48th to 5th Avenue is the portion that we would vacate to make room new road, the new Hanauer section. The interesting thing is that there's only two property owners. One is the RDA and one is Murray City. So the piece to the west, that section will automatically go to the city. The section to the east will go to the RDA, and eventually, as you'll see in this portion, so the new Hanauer Street goes in there, but the portion of there's a parking lot for City Hall on the opposite side, so on the east side of Hanauer Street. So eventually, I'm guessing that the RDA would want to, or the city and the RDA would want to make sure that gets into the city's name for maintenance and going forward. So hopefully this graphic is clear and for the purpose of that. So the Hanauer Street, you could see where it currently is and how that would be part of the parking lot if we left Hanauer in place. So there are some things that are going on right now. We're still working with the utility owners in there, the gas company, Comcast, and Verizon, and a couple others that have some utilities in there right now. Some say they don't need them. Others, need to relocate. So there still is some work that needs to be done, but it's important for us to start this process and get this vacated. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Danny?
Just thank you for the images. They're really clear.
Okay. All right.
All right. Thanks, Danny.
Okay. Let me figure out how to stop sharing this screen.
All right. Announcements, Jan.
I just want to remind all of you of our budget meetings next week, Monday and Tuesday, May 11th and 12th. Both days it will be 12:30 to about 4:30. There'll be virtual meetings and they will be showed live on Facebook and YouTube as usual for residents to review that. That's all I have.
Okay, with that, the meeting is adjourned. We'll re-adjourn at 6:30 for council meeting.